Okay, so I think everybody's got the lineup in front of them. We may as well kind of start off here. If you guys have any questions, fire them in the chat. I'd love to hear what everyone has for like tasting notes and things like that, or even just wacky comments. In fact, you don't even have to like. You can even just judge me in real time if you want. All right, so we're going to start with the first one here. We're going to go with Dram More. Dram More is an independent bottler that typically does Scotch whiskey, but there is a couple things here and there. Actually, I've really only seen them do rum and whiskey. Maybe they do something else too. Oh, Eli, I think you might have some noise going on there. That's all right, man. No worries. Yeah, so we've had a couple rums here and there, and this is our first batch of a line of rums that we had from them. It included a couple of Four Squares, this Guatemala, maybe a Fiji, and then a Mauritius, which we've been seeing a lot more lately. I'm sure a lot of you already know, but the basis of rum being molasses, but it's not just molasses. It could be a few things. It could be molasses. It could be, which is not actually what we're drinking right now. It can be pure cane juice, like fresh cane juice, which is also not what we're having, but we'll have that in a second. And the third, there's three or four, even like in India, they use, Amrit uses something called jaggery, which is a solid rum, a solid sugar. And that was kind of interesting too. But throughout the Guatemala, they use what's called cane honey, or some people might call it like golden syrup or cane syrup, but it's essentially like fresh cane juice that's boiled down mildly until it reaches about 70% sugar per volume, and it's stable that way, and it's so they can kind of cask it up or transport it in vessels and whatnot. So all throughout Guatemala, they do this. It's in specifically in Guatemala, what they use molasses for is a drink called aguardiente, which is kind of similar. It's also, I guess, there's some similarities between that and things like cachaça, or if you've had like guaro in Costa Rica or seco in Panama. It's all in that same kind of realm where it's usually like a white sugar spirit, sometimes more flavorful than others, often mixed into a drink. Anyways, this one, there's one main principal distillery in Guatemala. It's called DARSA. It is an abbreviation. It's like Destiladora de Alcohol y Rones, and then SA at the end, which I don't know what the SA means. They This was kind of a result in the consolidation of the rum industry, which actually happens in a few countries. Like historically, there would be more than a couple of distilleries, and then they'll slowly kind of like condense in. And this was the case because of either like the sugar trade declining, or just I don't know, like difficulties in getting product to market, or just markets generally failing. This huge distillery is also the brand, or not the brand, the producer that's responsible for brands such as Botren, which you might have seen before, and Ron Zacapa, which I'm almost guarantee you've seen before. So anyways, I'll keep going a bit, but if you haven't already started, I gotta join in on you, because I haven't really had much in the way of spirits yet. I gotta prime my palate. Mm. Cool. So if you had a lot of like molasses-based rums, you might already kind of detect some slight differences. This is much more of a lighter bodied rum. I was reading in, and I can't really tell, like most of the stuff that they do through Darsa is all column still rum, which is a very clean spirit. I think this probably translates at least a little into that, although they might do a little bit of both. And there is a roundness to it, but I'm also wondering if that's maybe the cane honey as opposed to the molasses, because it will make a slightly lighter rum that way. But I guess I'm not really sure. Um, Eli, Harmon, did you guys have any notes on there?
I mean, I almost get like I like classic like clove, nutmeg, that sort of stuff, but then like some light lilac, and then on the palate, like just like a little bit of like Szechuan peppercorns almost, which is like
Cool.
quite interesting. Like that little herbaceous, like little almost pyrazine, but not quite. And I
Mm,
don't know.
cool.
It's yeah.
Yeah, I was getting like personally, I was getting a little bit more kind of like that old rotting wood, old book kind of like mustiness. There is like a cool kind of like it's definitely I I don't always say this as a bad thing, but there is definitely a bit of a industrial rum-like note to it, where that's a little bit industrial solventy. I was also getting a little bit of fermented apples on there too, like the like little fruitiness just kind of poking out. Yeah, Harmony, what do you think?
I agree with you. Like, for me, I'm getting those kind of wood notes. Definitely some nice sweetness there, but there's like also this like nice kind of soft wood tannin that sits on the tongue a little bit for me right before that heat kind of comes in.
Mm,
And some nice fruit on the back end. And
mm,
definitely peppers, like when Eli said peppercorns, um, that kind of stood out to me.
mm.
So
Very
I
cool.
just
I
got one quick
honestly,
question.
mm, yeah.
When we're doing these tastings, is there a preferred or best way to kind of do the tasting as far as putting it in your mouth? It's not like wine, we're not gurgling, but small sips. It's a bit hot. So if there's something for that you could provide us rather than just,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no sweat. Sorry, I guess most of our virtuals like it seems to be a lot of like the kind of the same kind of group, but yeah, absolutely. If like I prefer my rum, oh well, most of my spirits like fairly neat and fairly untainted. I'm not going to tell you guys to not put any water in it because that's kind of up to you. When I'm tasting myself, like I usually like to keep it on my palate for a little bit. I know it's gonna if you're kind of new to like the neat spirit world, it will kind of anesthetize your tongue at least right off the bat. Slowly that'll start to kind of fade. Like even within your first dram, you'll start to get some of those sensations back. You'll be able to kind of swish it around a little bit more. Maybe not like in the like I personally don't swish it like you would wine when you're doing like full cheek swishing. But I do like to balance, like kind of like let it float around to each part of the palate, even the top of my mouth, before I swallow. Tonight I'm spitting a little bit just because I'm feeling just a little under the weather and I don't want to like have too much, but I'll probably do like half and half spit and swallow. It's totally up to you for that. But yeah, if you are having any issues with the like kind of gauging flavors, especially with these, because I mean some of these are monsters. Like we started off with 57%, and I think that's like one of the lower, but we're going all the way up to 66 towards the end there. So it's going to be aggressive. Um, and being able to kind of get through that while analyzing everything definitely takes a little bit of practice. But yeah, hopefully that answers a little bit for you.
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Um, as I was speaking to, I actually on the palate, I was getting a little bit more of those like kind of like that soft gingerbread and a little bit of citrus notes on there too. Like if I was eating like you know how lemon cakes sometimes they gotta like drizzle the lemon syrup on top. Like it's just the top part where it's kind of crusty and like brownie edge, but with like tart lemon sauce. It's kind of cool.
I can see that. I put a drop of water in just to see, and the citrus definitely jumps out.
Hmm.
I
Very
actually
cool.
think that's a really good rum.
Yeah, it's cool. I honestly like I gotta be honest, I don't gravitate a lot towards Guatemala because I think we well we see quite a few of them, whether it be through like we have like this, the boutique, um the Rum Nation has a lot of them. We had a couple of them, I think. And sometimes I just found them a little bit bland, although I have had a couple standouts. Yeah, I actually quite like this one. I wonder if maybe the cask strength and completely unadulterated rum helps a little bit as well. Like I mean, for those who might not be aware, like our market has been absolutely saturated over like throughout the 2000s with like these premium American rum, like Americanized rums, where it was really kind of sweet. They gave you an age which may or may not be correct because they'll, you know, sometimes use like the Solaris system in certain countries where instead of putting this rum in cask and purging it in 10 years, they'll put it in a series of casks that kind of has like little remnants of previous batches. And so at that point, things like ages actually becomes a little nebulous and a little bit more average, or at least the age values average out. Yeah, but I mean, this one we're getting like a full-on 10-year cask, which is pretty cool, and maybe those like differentiating characteristics might actually give give way to me liking it a little bit more. Yeah. Who knows? Should we?
Sean?
Should we? Yeah, yeah.
Are we revisiting these after we're going to go through them once and then come back? So don't drink it all?
I mean, that's up to you. I mean, I will leave a couple drops, like a sip or so usually, but I mean, I guess it depends on how late we get to the last one. If I don't want to keep everyone on too long or anything, but yeah. So I guess. But having said that, feel free to keep a sip or two in your glass and then go read through it again, because it will change a little bit as it sits in the glass. In fact, I think like visiting at least one of these earlier, I think it was the Trinidad. It was way nicer after being in the glass for a little bit. So I'm really glad this one's last poured or last tasted, I guess. All right. So I mentioned we started off with kind of the middle ground of the sugar variety being used for more of like not fresh cane juice, not molasses. Now we're going to go to the opposite end of the spectrum, which is fresh cane juice. Fresh cane juice, for those who don't know, it wasn't originally what was used for rum production. Originally, it was like molasses was kind of what was used. It was discovered sadly by slaves that you could that was a fermentable beverage that you could do stuff with. But that was a large portion of the early parts of like sugar production and rum production. After a while, I think it was in the mid 1600s, the discovery that you could get sugar out of sugar beets kind of took the world by storm in a way, where you didn't have to transport like people and raw materials to and from the equator and equatorial regions in order to make rum. You could grow sugar beets in France, and like kind of those areas that are a little bit colder. So as you might expect, once this cheaper form of sugar came, the sugar market kind of crashed, and particularly a lot of these French colonies, like they kind of didn't really know what to do with it, so they started making rum out of the raw materials instead of the processed materials. So fresh cane juice is what fresh cane juice rum following the French AOC designations are called agricole rums. Agricole, I'm not going to go through all the rules because that it's not really that entertaining, but it does have to be fresh cane juice. So no molasses, no boil it down. It does have to be harvested between the months of January and August, because it is the drier seasons of those regions, and you'll get the highest percentage of sugar. And by the nature of sugarcane, actually, like this kind of an interesting thing to learn. Sugarcane juice, when you press it, it will start to go sour almost immediately. And not even that, but once you harvest it, it'll actually start to go sour inside the cane stalk. So it needs to be harvested and crushed and then stabilized in some way, either be like in a fermenter or what, like fairly quickly. And this has the distillery that we're trying right now actually has a pretty good system in order to do that, where they actually have their lots and their crusher like quite close by, where they can, the time that they take from harvest to crush is under an hour, which is excellent. It's actually the shortest one in the rum world as far as I know. So what we're going to drink now is called Rum JM, and it's a French rum from Martinique. They call this not just an agricole rum, but a vieux agricole rum, vieux being French for old. And in order for it to be an old, like a vieux agricole, it needs to be in cask for 3 years. This is a little younger than the first one we had, and really old agricoles are actually not super common. I'm not really sure why. I think they're just often drank a little young, well, vieux, but not like 18, 20 years old. But that's all right. Yeah. So the distillery was named after a gentleman named Jean-Marie Martin in 1845. I think sometime the 1900s, I believe it was bought by a larger family business called just GBH. I couldn't find a lot of information on those, but it is nice to know that it's still a family-run family-run businesses in the rum world, especially with such a robust history and history of large companies buying up smaller companies and whatnot. Anyways, yeah. So another neat thing about what they do, I should also say this is a very recent brand on our market. I've known about them for a little while, but it's really only in the past 2 months that they started making it into the province. And I was champing at the bit to try and open one of these up to start kind of get the feel for it and see what it is and kind of share it with everybody. And I was pretty happy to put it in here. It was actually one of the first ones I reached for when making the lineup. So I'm sure you've already started nosing it already. One last thing I just wanted to mention too, which is kind of interesting. The process in which they make their rum suitable for casking or giving or bottling is they will take an exceptionally long period of time to water their rum down to casking strength or for drinking strength. It'll come off their still at 72%, and what they'll end up doing is they have a volcanic spring in their that runs right through their fields, and they will take small amounts of water. They will add it to the 72% spirit, and then they will let it sit for multiple 2 weeks at a time, because that gives time for any residual chemical reactions to happen, for any kind of just intermingling with that water, and it makes it kind of it helps keep it kind of soft and not disjointed or anything. And then if it's not enough, they'll add a little bit more water and take another couple of weeks to kind of do that. So it's actually a fairly long process, funny enough. Okay, what do we get on the nose here? So this one's a bit more pastry forward. I'm getting like angel food cake. Quite vanilla heavy, but that more floral Tahitian vanilla rather than big spicy Madagascar. Kind of buttery.
On the palate, for me, it's like a little bit more drier vegetal and a little bit of licorice.
Good call. As soon as you said that, yeah, a little licorice, almost there's almost a mentholated kind of note on there too. Yeah, vegetal. Yeah, you're dead on that. But still some fruity tones too, like pear, apple skin. There's often that it doesn't happen all the time, but often, especially with some distilleries that happen to be close to the coastal regions, it can take on a bit of a briny note on agricole specifically, because it'll actually the cane itself will actually have some of that brininess in it. I don't know if I get a lot on this one. There might be a touch of saltiness, not a huge amount, but definitely some.
I get
How are
almost
they
like a
aging these again?
lime
Sorry if I missed that.
Yep. Sorry. Sorry, Eli.
I almost get a lime zest note on it as well.
No, nice.
Coming into a little bit of a that bourbony cherry note, if that makes sense.
Interesting. It's kind of cool. There's something about this that also kind of reminds me of Armagnac in a way. I'm not really sure what it is. I wonder if it's like a column still character, although not that Armagnac is explicitly that or anything. Just a salty model paint. Interesting model paint. When I revisited, I also had a little bit of a rubbery note on there too, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I got a metallic note a little bit, so the model paint is actually really interesting note. I get that. It's the more it sits there. You said beets. When you said beet sugar, I was like, is he putting that in my brain? But I did get that on this rum.
It might be a bit of an earthiness. Yeah.
It is, but that's part of that vegetal note for me.
Totally. Yeah, I agree. sorry, Harmony, you said, does that souring process have anything to do with fermenting natural yeast? I think that it, yeah, yeah. And then Andrew mentions like bacterial fermentation. I think it's, I think that's the same kind of, yeah, the same kind of thing, right? Like, and we can revisit that a little later too, but it can actually slowly turn into what they call cane vinegar, which is not generally used in the industry, with one exception, which I'll get into a little later. But yeah, I don't think those notes are generally not desirable. Kevin's can't get past the palate. I mean, Agricole is a different style of rum for sure. And honestly, I would say as far as Agricoles go, this is actually quite mild and mellow. If anyone was in on my last tasting, what did we have? We had that did we have that white Portuguese, the white I think the Añejos de Norte, which was like so briny and olivey and like really, Andrew had a lot of like unflattering tasting notes on that one. Yeah, yeah, Jeff, the one with the pineapple on the label for sure. Cool. Well, I'm gonna start nosing the next one. The next one, the bottler for this bottle is definitely becoming more and more close to my heart, and like becoming a personality that I'm not gonna say I idolize, but like I would say a very well respected person, at least within the Kensington wine market. And he's not with Wake Kensington wine market, but we've done multiple tastings with him, and we have quite a few bottlings of his. I'm not sure if anyone is aware of the gentleman named Angus McRail, aka the Whiskey Sponge. He's his parent company that he uses to bottle is called Decadent Drinks, and it has a few different labels underneath it. And we're drinking one of the labels, not the Whiskey Sponge, and the other one would be he has got like Solstice and Equinox, but this one is called NAS 15. Now, for anyone in the whiskey world, NAS is a bit of a controversial term. It means no age statement or non-age statement. In the mid teens, early teens, mid teens, it started to become a trend in the whiskey world to take away the age statements on your bottles and just release them. Like Highland Park was doing that for a while. Biggest controversial one was Macallan, who stopped doing that for a little bit too. The I think in the past 3 years, like a lot of distilleries have stopped doing that just because the fallback was a little bit too extreme. But Angus at one point, when he was kind of thinking of new ideas for his company, was just thinking like NAS, what can we really do about that? And then he came up with the idea of a notable age statement, which is kind of the diametric opposite. So he said, perfect. So that's what he made for this brand called Notable Age Statements. There's only been a handful out there, but we've had like an excellent 30-year-old blended malt. There's a 58-year-old cognac in the store, right? Cognac or Armagnac? One of those two in the store right now. And then this guy right here, which is our first rum from that brand. A lot of people may have heard the name Foursquare without the rum in the rum world, and that's likely because it's like it's the bee's knees now, it's the cat's meow and all that stuff. And I gotta be honest, like I'm gonna be completely like forefront with it hasn't clicked with me yet. I have had some amazing Foursquares. I think I've had like 2 or 3 that I've really kind of uh, I couldn't shake a stick at. A bunch of them, not as much. So Foursquare is it was a distillery historically way back in the day. It was purchased and reopened by the Seal family, namely Richard Seal, in 1995, I believe, 1996. And he started doing things a little bit like it is in an English tradition where he's kind of doing a little bit of column still and a little bit of pot still. It wasn't super common in the Caribbean to blend different stills into rum into one until the past like 30 years or so. But he definitely, I would say he's definitely at the forefront of this. So neat things about his distillery. There is a rumor that the people of Barbados drink more Foursquare than any other rum label. I'm not really sure about that. I'm gonna call it a rumor because Mount Gay's been around for a long time and they're huge. But that's all right. It's what I read, and I will keep it on that. He's also tried his best to make his distillery kind of as green as possible, like kind of eco-friendly, to the point where so a couple things he's done. One of his pot stills his column stills, sorry, operate under what's called a vacuum distillation, which is more of it's both an energy saver and it's a gentler distillation for the spirit. Maybe not as many like crazy heat-based reactions are happening all at once. He's also capturing all of the carbon released during fermentation. He sells it back to the beverage industry, so it's not altruistic or anything. But I mean, it is, the end result is still a net positive in my opinion. Jeff said, "Oh yeah, yes, yeah." One of our wine buyer actually was down in Barbados just a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, and said it wasn't really all that available with a couple of exceptions. So yeah, maybe that rumor is not. Yeah, whatever. I haven't been there, so I don't have a full opinion, I suppose. Okay, how do we? Well, first and foremost on the nose, it's like charred wood, bourbon forward, like pretty hefty chunk of pretty hefty chunk of barrel.
Yeah, I think that's why I like this so much. And Cam said that he gets like almost like rum cake notes on it, just off the nose. Nice sweetness to it, lots of oak. I really enjoy the palate, although I commented that for 50% it feels hotter than the previous one somehow.
I think so too, and I wonder so there's a giant, like a massive amount of the rum that's distilled in the Caribbean actually gets shipped up to either Liverpool or the Netherlands, to a company called EA Shear, who's probably the largest like holding in the northern hemisphere. So he has two locations, like I said, Copenhagen, I think it is Copenhagen, and Liverpool, and it's just like giant warehouses. And these guys will blend rums for you. You can buy casks. They will create a brand for you, more or less, like pretty big industry. But there's also, it's more of a rarity, but like a lot of rums that are fully matured in the tropics. I mean, it's neat because it's a completely different environment. Like it's a completely opposite environment to what England and the Netherlands is. The end result of that too is going to have a really big impact on what you're getting out of that cask. And this one's so hot, I can't, like on the nose, like it's so intense that I wonder how much of it is done in the Caribbean itself. He doesn't really say, unfortunately, but oh, it's like so stinky with wood, it's crazy.
I find this one much more characteristic of rum than the last two. It's on the nose and the palate.
Yeah.
And texturally, you can feel its age as well, like 15 years versus the other two. They're just a bit lighter. The finish seems shorter. And yeah. And going back, just smelling the other two to this, like they're all so different and they've changed quite a bit.
It's pretty neat. So I guess also this is a molasses-based rum too. So in the first three, we literally did the three dominant types of sugar fermentation for rums. Yeah, this has a bit more weight to it as well. Like I don't think it's not a light and fruity rum by any stretch. It is definitely more grippy and when I mentioned I think it was the first one that I thought had a touch of a little industrial note to it. I find more with this. This is a little bit more like notes of like auto repair shop or wood shop or something of that ilk. Yeah. Jake said sweet and spicy. Yeah. I'd be curious to know where exactly the sweetness is coming from. Like none of these rums that we have in front of us have any sugar added. I mentioned earlier with those North American style rums that we were kind of getting like Zacapa and Zaya and all these things. A lot of those are quite heavily dosed with sugars. For a while, all those distillers that did that, they were kind of hush about it. They didn't disclose it, and they're actually in full on denial. But after a while, it kind of came to the point where so many people were talking about it, and so many people were and things like government testing and whatnot was actually able to kind of disprove it, really, to the point where they kind of can't really deny it anymore. There's not really a big database out there, although I think there was a bunch of rum enthusiasts that were trying to sort out who was dosing what and how much. I don't know if that one is. I don't know if that site's fully up yet, but I also haven't looked in a little bit. Yeah, but all the ones we have in here are completely unadulterated that way, so no sugar added, which is my preference. I want to taste what the rum is. I don't really have a sweet tooth. I don't like desserts all that much, so I'd rather, if this comes across sweet naturally, that's what I want to have. Creamy, yeah, Harmony. You mentioned creamy. That's cool. There's like a creme brulee on the nose, more on the nose. Mm. Eli, any opinion on there?
Yeah, I mean, I also begin to get just like classic clove, a little bit of cherry, a little bit of coconut, those sorts of notes. It's good, but it doesn't excite me to the end that some of the other ones later in the lineup do. So
Yeah, that's fair. I think like the flavors that really got me into rum, we will start experiencing in the next four, more so in the last three. But I'm I'm pushing myself to trying to appreciate all of it, and I do enjoy this for what it is. I do like this like I like bourbon just enough to get into it as well. So a dram like this, it's still bourbon forward enough that it's got cool notes like an old fashioned that you had like you jump just a little too much orange bitters in there kind of thing, right? Like that really nice kind of cocktail note. Although I'm not sure if I would turn this into a cocktail at its price, but nah, that's all right. Either way. Well, should we keep going, I guess? It's about the halfway mark. Any other good questions going through in the chat here? How does one identify ester notes? Estery notes. Kevin. Oh yeah. So yeah. So Andrew already answered you with that. He mentioned, yeah, fruity, pineapple, banana, cherry, sometimes like exotic, funky kind of notes. We'll experience that in the like more so in the second to last and the third to last, but a little bit of everywhere. And I'll go into a little bit about what's causing that too.
I always personally find, for me, at least in rum, I'm not as used to tasting and nosing rum. The esters don't often show up for me till quite a bit of time in the glass. Like I'm always kind of hit with that chemical kind of funky note, that unfamiliar sugar process, like sugar note that I'm not really able to identify. But now that some of these have been sitting in my glass for 30 minutes, like going back, I'm starting to identify some more of those fruits, some more of those esters that I didn't find originally. Yes, Kevin, that chemical romance that is rum. So like when Eli identifies them, what seems so effortlessly, I'm starting to get a little bit more like on the first one now when I go back, that's just like straight up like Slurpee syrup for me. Like kind of that
Yeah,
Coca-Cola
fair.
uh melted Slurpee, like really sugary, but you get those cherries that come out. And even the
Oh,
second
yeah.
one, you get more of those bananas. But
Oh,
originally for me, when I get into rum, it seems a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more funky, and I can identify more woods and industrial notes than I can fruit initially.
yeah, totally fair. I mean, like obviously when someone says like estery, there's a little bit more than just like there's a few different things going on there. But I mean, like the esters are literally just like a chemical, like the most dominant one called ethyl acetate. If you were to just have like, a big vial of it, like it probably wouldn't be very nice to just stick your nose in. But even when you have like high proof spirits, um, on first nosing, it is challenging, right? Like it's gonna burn your nose. Sometimes you gotta turn your head away. As it sits in the glass, of course, those will either condense back into the liquid or maybe blow off with the air, and that kind of makes it a little bit easier as well. Yeah. So with estery stuff, like you might even let it sit in the glass for a little bit longer. You're right. Okay, so we are heading down to Germany / South America. Germany because that was where the bottler is located. South America because that's where it was originally distilled. So Guyana has an incredibly rich history in rum production. At one point, if I remember correctly, there was something along the lines of like 12 to 1800 like different little sugar plantations on there at its prime. As you might expect, a lot of these are going to close down over time. Natural consolidation occurs. Places go defunct, and obviously with the with the whole sugar beet thing, companies just wouldn't be able to survive all that long. There is now one single distiller maybe there's a couple craft ones that have opened up with the boom of the spirits industry, but there's one big player in the rum industry in Guyana. And that's called Demerara Distillers Limited, also known as maybe Diamond or DDL. It's right along the Demerara River, and they have a neat history as well in the sense that there was some really singular and interesting and unique and one of a kind distilleries throughout Guyana throughout like the 80s and the 90s. A few of which, if you ever see like an El Dorado bottling that says like Port Morant or Versailles and more. There's a really weird one called I Flute, but it's spelt like UIGHTLUGT or something like that. It's a Dutch name. And I might be pronouncing it wrong too, to be honest with you. I've also heard some people say outflute, but whatever. As they were slowly closing down over the past 30, 40 years, those one-of-a-kind stills were transplanted to Demerara Distillers Limited into their big warehouse. And as such, they now have a veritable library of these old archaic stills. Some of them, like I said, are one of a kind. There's a pot still made out of wood. There's a double pot still made out of wood. And there's a coffee still made out of wood as well, which is a fairly big endeavor. And they're all still functional. Like they might have like pieces replaced and serviced or whatnot. And then so your first question, of course, is like a wooden still. How does that really work, right? They utilize this hardy wood in Guyana. I think it's called greenheart, and that it's a hard wood that's naturally resistant to like water damage, water wear, and so it can last a long time being used in a piece of a still. And also the end result is you might get some neat interaction between the spirit and the wood when they're stilling as well. So Guyana's got some pretty singular rums and style. Like there's not a whole lot like it. But having said that, they also have 11 different I think it's 11 stills in their warehouse, so they can make any number of different kinds of distillate. Pretty much anything that you see that says Guyana rum is made there, unless it's like really old, maybe one of the original sites. But they're few and far between, and they're becoming quite expensive now too. So what we have here is an 18-year-old from Demerara Distillers. It was distilled in 2003 and it was bottled in 2022. I don't know, like this at some point would have made its way into Europe as well, as a vat or casks or what have you, but I'm not really sure when. A lot of places don't really disclose that, and I think even Sheer doesn't really disclose a lot of that information either. 18 years and it's dark like this. It's got this, I gotta be honest, it's one of the most beautiful colors I've seen for rum. It's got this nice little like rusty red hue to it that when it's in the bottle, I don't know, man. I'm all about it. Actually, I should share that bottle image with you. I meant to be doing that, but I'm not very good at remembering. Oh, come on. Why can't I? The bar is now. Oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me. There we go. Oh my God, why aren't you not doing this? So here we go. So even with the color complement there, like, oh man, what a cool looking color. I love it so much. Anyways, so with that color, it's also kind of interesting. I don't know if that means it would have spent all of its time in Europe. Like, I mean, that's quite dark for 18 years old, and I'm pretty, and it's just ex-bourbon. So I would be hard pressed to deny that this likely matured at least part of its time in the tropics there, taking on some of that color from that bourbon wood. Yeah. Anyways, what do we got on the nose here? Kind of spicy. Ooh. Like orchard fruit action on there, like a little peach.
I was gonna say I get cherry blossoms on it. Be up front.
Cool. You mentioned Old Sauternes as well. That's kind of neat. Oh, for the color, I bet, right?
Yeah.
Right.
There is like a little bit of almost like a cheesy note on there though. Like right up front, just like or when I
Andrew,
first poured it out,
yeah.
it might have blown off now. Yeah.
Andrew mentioned it could be one of their colored marks. I'm not sure. I don't. Maybe I don't know enough to know if they're actually making anything. But I mean, I don't know if they're adding anything after the fact. Mike says this is his favorite so far. That's cool. Mm. So this is
Getting a
neat
lot of
because it's,
cedar on the nose.
yeah, it's quite wood heavy, but it's not like it's not as charred as like the Foursquare. It's kind of interesting how it definitely took on some of that barrel note, but not like it's not like noticeably ex-bourbon. It's actually got Eli, I think you mentioned, did you mention fruit or oh, you said cherry blossom, sorry, yeah. I was gonna say, like, if somebody told me that this was matured in like ex-sherry or ex-wine cask, I would probably believe them. I also think because of that body, that slight roundness, I would be inclined to think that maybe this is done in one of their pot stills, but unfortunately, they're not. They didn't disclose what kind, so roll a dice from 1 to 11. It's fruitier on the palate than.
I almost got like a cherry Coke kind of right up front.
Very neat.
Yeah.
There's some cool medicinal notes, but it is also like some pretty cool like cooked down pineapple notes that poke up here and there.
Like burnt orange, even like that little bit of citrus, but like if you took like a burnt orange and then like scraped off the chard, that's like especially on the like as it clears the palate.
Mm. Oh, okay, Andrew. Andrew, so according to Andrew, you said there is a couple that they'll dose before being barreled. Yeah, yeah, that's totally fair. Like I know there's some of the stuff that like I know they dose El Dorado, for example. And yeah, some of them they'll like line the barrels with molasses before putting into. I I I guess I'd always be of the assumption that they wouldn't do that with stuff that they're going to sell in bulk en masse, but I don't know enough about that part of the industry to really be able to say. So you may very well be right. Either way, I mean, I don't find it like overly sweet or anything, so it might just be a little bit of caramel color. It might even on the palate, like you might even be able to pick a little bit of that up. Mm. Man, that's a fun bottle. I like that.
Yeah, this is just like this just keeps going. Every time you smack your tongue on the top of your mouth, you just get more new flavors that come out of that. Like those like creme brulee burnt sugars for me. You said like baked grilled pineapples, like grilled peaches for me. Everything is like grilled and caramelized and breaking down. Black cherries. Yeah, this is beautiful. This is really fun to drink.
There's also a sister cask to this as well. I haven't had a chance to try that one. It does look very similar, and I wouldn't be surprised if they are literally just sister casks. But yeah, if anybody like goes out to buy this and this one's out of stock by exam, because I think there might only be a couple bottles of each left. The other one I imagine is going to be fairly similar. Mm. good points, Andrew. I don't know if I've had like single rums from their coffee still, but that's cool. That makes me want to try a few more though, honestly. Yeah, Jeff, I think low stock usually means 2 or below, I think. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. So for this next one, it's kind of interesting. We have there is a this is actually the only rum in our lineup here that's a blend of different distilleries, which is kind of cool. There's a company in the UK called Elixir Distillers, founded by longtime whiskey and spirit lover Sukhinder Singh. He has been buying casks and procuring different spirits for decades, and in the past 10 years, everyone has really been seeing the fruits of his labor in the sense that we've been buying some truly incredible casks off him. But one of his loves and one of his passions is rum as well. And his I think it was in the 2000s, he was offered at some point like these old flagons of old British rum, which they no longer serve. I think it was the end of the 1960s when they stopped serving the black tot. Or sorry, not, it was Black Tot Days, sorry, where they stopped serving rum to the British Royal Navy. But as you might expect, there was a bunch of rum that was aging, ready to be given to them for that reason. So those rums ended up getting purged at a barrel at some point. I think it was another 15 years down the road. I think it might have been in the 80s when that happened, and put into these vessels. I think they were clay. I'm pretty sure they were clay vessels, and they got sealed up, and they ended up being brokered off. And he ended up somehow procuring a couple of those, and because he was just buying. This is just in the middle of when he was just buying stuff. And at some point, he had to kind of he went out. He's like, you know what? I should probably try those. I didn't really have yet. And he tried out these flagons, and they ended up being like this spectacular rum. And of course, now like there's really only a handful of guesses as to like what exactly is in it. But I'm sadly to say there's not much of that in this blend. However, there is a tiny bit of amount in this blend. But I think that was kind of part of what spurred him on with this line, where he actually started selling that rum specifically as black tot rum. And then on like aside from that, he also released a couple of other lines. One being called Black Tot Finest Caribbean, which is kind of his ode to that rum being made now with rums on the market that he's able to procure now. And then what we're having now, which is the Master Blenders Reserve, which is kind of the I believe it's Oliver Chilton, I believe, is the master blender, and that's him wanting to do what he wants to do with their stocks and the rums, and make something that's kind of also an ode to the old British Navy rum, but his own interpretation of it. What we have here is volume 3. It's from 2022. They released this in the UK like a year and a half ago, but that stuff seems to have a bit of a lag time to get here. So we're only now getting the 2022 version, but they already have the 2023 version, I think, over there. So we'll eventually see it. But we did get the 2021 and 2020, and they were both absolute crackers. Like they were excellent rums. So I want to share what's in this as well. Yeah, Jeff mentioned the recipes on the website, but I'll go through it as well, just because I got it right in front of me anyways. So in this blend that you have here, 29% of this is from Guyana, of ages 2 to 30 years old. I'm not going to be as detailed as the website I've got, just because for time purposes. 25% of it is from Barbados. You have about 7 to 16-year-olds from Foursquare and 19-year-olds from Mount Gay. 7% of this is from Jamaica, and it's 22 to 27-year-old from Clarendon, New Yarmouth, and Long Pond. It's kind of funny. We're actually, as a side note, we're seeing a lot of 25, 26, 27-year-olds from Clarendon hit the market now, which is kind of neat. I wonder if there was like this massive like parcel of casks that was sold off at some point. It's pretty cool. And then finally, the last 22%, well, sorry, not the last two, but 22% is from Trinidad. And you have 10 to 24-year-old from Trinidad Distillers Limited, which we'll also have as our last dram. And then 1.5% is from a now super famous but closed distillery called Caroni, and that was about 24 years old. And then the last part of it was what they do with their previous two generations is they keep a little bit of those rums to kind of like continue maturing in barrel. And in this case, it was an ex-sherry cask. And so they put 21% of that in there, and then a tiny amount, about 1% of that original rum stocks from like the 60s there. So pretty big, robust blend. And I have to say, like, I imagine him picking all this stuff to go in there was quite an endeavor, with a desk with like 80 samples on it, trying to like eye drop them in there. But either way, the result speaks for itself. So oh yeah. So like big tropical juice notes right off the bat. You can definitely tell like that. Only 7% Jamaica, but it's really making a huge impact, hey? So there's really juicy fruits. Like in my opinion, typically they're going to come from Jamaica. You'll probably get a little bit of that from well, depending on the mark that they're using, maybe a little bit from Trinidad. But really such juicy stuff I usually attribute to like one thing, and that's all that Jamaica in there. Actually, there's a healthy amount of I suddenly remember too, there's a healthy amount of Jamaica in that 21% perpetual stock, because I think the 2021 batch they accidentally dumped, I think it was a handful of casks of high ester Hampton, because somebody misread the recipe that he asked for, and they had to like blend it out and make the recipe bigger by putting more stuff in there, and then they set more of that aside. So there's actually a lot in. Yeah, Andrew mentioned 3 times too much Hampton. Yeah, totally. And so that's actually probably a healthy part of that 21% that's going in here as well, which would totally explain how intense that Jamaica note is. Kevin says coconut and pineapple. Just a ton of pineapple. Eli, what are you thinking?
Mango, or like I almost get a little bit of like orange blossom, and then maybe like even like banana foster, be like just that little bit of like caramelized banana, but it's like more aromatic because the booze is there too, and it's, you know what I mean? The thing with this cast, or the thing with this blend though, is everything's just so well integrated together. I find like it doesn't for how much that's in it, it doesn't come across as like disjointed or crazy. Like it just shows like a really skilled hand in terms of blending. With this sort of style. So
I think like was it the might have been the Barbados or the rum jam. We had like that fennel, like kind of licoricey no, and the retronasal in here brings a little bit more of that. It's almost like mentholy with anise. It's pretty cool. Yeah, you're right. I love how like well integrated it is. It's really kind of everything that needs to happen with it has happened already in the bottle. Like it's all like it's not disjointed. It's actually, it comes across surprisingly sweet. They say specifically that there's 0 sugar added, but I think for legal purposes, like they didn't add any sugar, but I'm sure you couldn't really tell with the components that they're putting in there, because it is like it's got a noticeable hit of sweetness on it, right? Like I would say it might even show as the sweetest we've had in the lineup so far, at least in my opinion. Cam, Harmony, any notes?
No, pretty much everything you said. Bananas.
Yeah.
The fruit on it. I'm actually getting a lot of wood on this one too. I don't know if it's stuck in my head now, but it seems like a lot of these that we've had so far have been, you really get the wood on it.
I mean, it's quite a dark dram, and I assume they're not adding additives, but I mean, I'm not really sure what else might be happening. There, like I said, there is like a dose of there that's going in sherry cask and whatnot too.
I really am tasting the esters on this, like the
Yeah.
Jamaican funk that you're talking about.
Yeah. You mentioned like both banana and pineapple, I would say, are probably the 2 dominant flavors coming out of Jamaican rum. So I mean, it's like and I happen to really love pineapple and not as much bananas, but I mean, I also I think I tend to detect pineapple more on these than I do banana as well. Our friend of the store, Doug Page, like loves like Worthy Park, for example, because it's like pure banana, whereas like I actually struggle to pick up the banana, and then I get other stuff first. Jeff narrows it down to averaging 11 years. Hey, good for you, man. That was some quick math. There was a lot of things to add into that. Did you do weighted average with the percentages? Hmm, beautiful. I honestly I can't tell if I like it more or less than the 2021 version. The 2021 is a little bit more Jamaican heavy, and I wonder if I like that a little bit more. Yeah, Rusty asked a little bit about like the esters. That was going to be a little bit more towards the last two because we have like straight, or at least this next one, because we have straight up Jamaica coming up, and this one is probably like the highest ester of them all for sure. Um, and that's kind of like the area that I've been trying to learn as much about too. And there's a handful of writers that have been doing a pretty good job of kind of diving into kind of what makes what. But I don't want to go, I'm not going to go too nerdy into it. I'm just gonna, but I will share it for sure. In fact, now's may as well is the right time because we can just kind of go on to it. I'm going to go into the next one, which is an Italian bottler called Valentia Mallet. Also, two whiskey geeks that kind of are from Italy who just love. Well, they do a little bit of cognac as well, or there's an Armagnac, sorry, Armagnac rum whiskey, the main ones. They did a little bit of. I think there was an American whiskey in there too. But their names are David Romano and Fabio Armoli. And if I've never done a tasting with it, but I know Andrew has, and apparently they're pretty like eclectic, fun guys. But just as a few of these other bottlings, this one was also bought from Europe, from Sheer. But what we're getting here, so Valentin Mallet, it's Jamaican rum. It says St. Catherine on the bottle. Jamaica is kind of divided up into its parishes, and I don't think there's any parish that has more than one distillery on it, but namely the St. Catherine's Parish has the Worthy Park distillery inside of it. Worthy Park has like they were kind of shuttered for a long time actually. Like they're a recent distillery in terms of them opening and redistilling. They've only been distilling since 2005 right now, but they were open prior to 1962 with a more of a history that I don't really need to go into. But they were closed for a long time before reopening again. And funny enough, we're actually drinking a 2005 here, which is pretty cool to get something from their starting year. Like, let's hope they're putting their best foot forward. But I've had a couple of I've had like 2005 and 2006 and a handful of these older ones, but the one part that I think is really neat about this is that 15 of its 17 years was tropical aging. They would have, I guess they sold this like at cask, or they've added casks to sell to the north to Europe there. But aging a rum in the tropical environments is a tricky thing because there's a lot of heat. The humidity varies country to country, and just as you might expect something like Kentucky, you're losing a ton of evaporation out of the barrel. Like that Angel share is not just a share; it's like Angel's gulps. Like they're just sucking it back. Same thing happens in the tropical environments. Like that stuff evaporates, and you really got to manage it. And keeping something in cask in that climate for 17, 20 years is I wouldn't call that an easy feat. Although there are certain countries that allow you to do a little bit more of that. Like I think there's an area in Guatemala that allows you to mature at higher altitudes, which ends up being a little bit cooler. You can do longer term maturation, but in Jamaica, I'm pretty sure it's a little bit more. I don't think they have those same warehouses at that altitude, so it's all just hot tropical aging. Anyway, so Jamaica was kind of this is what got me into rum. Like I mentioned, our market was just so saturated with just, I don't know. I found it kind of flavorless. I found it kind of just like it was sweet stuff. It had an age statement on it. That's fine. You could buy like old bottles for under $100, but honestly, until I started diving into like Jamaican rum and even a little bit of Guyana rum, where I started really kind of turning my head because I didn't know those flavors and aromas could exist. And this is a really cool example of it. We spoke a lot about esters in the past, and that and first thing that happens when you put this to your nose is that is what you're getting. That is kind of a quintessential example of a Jamaican rum. Like you get tangy sour fruits. I do actually get like a reasonable amount of banana on here, but I still do think it's a little bit more pineapple heavy. White wine is very spirity, very solventy. So how did they get those flavors in there, and how is it different than everything else? So there's a handful of reasons, like ways that kind of happens. The most like talked about is the use of something called like dunder or stillage or muck. Without getting again too into the nitty gritty, after you run your still and it's kind of finished off, what's left at the bottom of your still, called like stillage, is more, or there might be a few other names for it. Like it's got to go somewhere. All the ethanol and all of the volatile compounds have all, well, the easily volatile compounds are gone, but they got to put it somewhere. And traditionally, there's like this legend of it going into kind of a pit in their yard, and there would be more chemical reactions happening there. And there's legends of it becoming this toxic, infectious, crazy thing where like animals would go in and die, and you find skeletons. And I don't think it's quite so nefarious, although it does provide hazards to the water table, so they do have to manage it in very specific ways. And now distilleries have it's not really a pit as much as they have vats that kind of store this stuff. And then what would you do with it? Well, they found that you can use that to kind of charge the flavor profile of your next rum. Chemically, I don't want to bore people's heads off with like chemistry, but to make an ester, the easiest way to make an ester, like you have your ethanol that you make from with your alcohol, and then you would combine it with what's called a carboxylic acid. And the easiest carboxylic acid to produce is actually ethyl acetate, or acetic acid or vinegar. So they would at times I shouldn't. There's some distilleries that do strictly this carboxylic acid rich dunder into their wash, and it would start to react and make these esters. There's other distilleries that, funny enough, will actually use cane vinegar and add that to it to increase it even more. I've spoken to a couple people that have claimed that Worthy Park doesn't use cane vinegar, but I've also seen tourist pictures of Worthy Park that has big things of cane vinegar. So I don't really know which one to believe. I don't smell much cane vinegar in here, and I do get it in Hampton, which does use it. So I'm not gonna say here or there. But either way, when they're using dunder and they put it in their wash, that natural, well, semi-natural reaction happens where ethanol, carboxylic acid comes together, ester pops out, and so does a molecule of water. It's a very easygoing reaction. But if you're doing that and you're using, say, column still, where you're stripping out most of your things, and then you might not end with a lot of esters in your final product. Luckily, in Jamaica, there's almost no column stills being used. In fact, I think Appleton is the only one that's really using it. But the stills in Jamaica are quite unique, and I'm going to share it with you here. It's actually pretty fun. They use what's called a retort pot still, or a double retort pot still, and this is a fairly new one. This image is courtesy of Maison Vellier, so I'll give credit to them on that. I don't remember where this one is from, but it's probably I think Long Pond, Hampton, and Worthy Park are the main ones. This might even be Clarendon, to be honest. But your main still here is where you're putting your wash. And then as it kind of comes over, it goes into what's called the first retort. And this pipe actually goes all the way down to the bottom and bubbles up that steam. And as it bubbles up that ethanol steam, it interacts with what's inside this retort, which is actually what they call their low wines, or their let's see, it's like a like partial distillation, 30% alcohol, what they part of what they want to have in what a still would normally have, let's see, it would turn it into its end product by putting it into their spirit still. It goes in here. As it goes in there, it picks up some of that ethanol from the vapor by heating it up with that steam, and then it's now a higher percentage alcohol vapor that goes into this next retort, which contains what they call their high wines, which is usually a 70% ABV liquor of usually the same stuff. And the same thing happens. The higher ABV is because at this point there's less heat because these things are heated, and then it picks up even more ethanol, in which case it then goes into its condenser. The act of using this type of still does a couple things. If you think about it, it's going under a second distillation here and a third distillation here, where that spirit is being purified more and more. So what you're getting is actually a triple distilled spirit, or equivalent to, kind of similar to how, like, if you're a whiskey guy, Loch Lomond has their straight neck stills that also mimic triple distillation. It's the same kind of thing. The other thing about that is esters are very volatile. They actually have ethyl acetate specifically, which is the principal ester here, has just a slightly lower boiling point than ethanol. So it's actually coming with the ethanol in pretty much every stage. And I'm going to show you a picture of an old one here too, because these things with like those weird acidic components that actually, like, oh, can I do that here? There we go. These stills get degraded so fast because of that, like, added acidification. And then this one, so this is from the Long Pond distillery, and it's already starting to look kind of, I don't know, a little worse for wear. I actually don't really know the timeline in which these guys have to replace all that stuff, but I'm sure it's way more often than a Scotch whiskey distillery. Okay, so anyways, at the end of the day, we get a handful of esters, it'll be ethyl acetate, ethyl butyrate, and a handful of others. But those are the two principal ones that you're getting for these fruity, exotic, kind of like, not industrial, but definitely solventy type notes. And you just, yeah, like, and no, honestly, and those, even in cask, those notes will stick around for years and years and years. We've had, I've had like high ester long ponds from the 40s that have been in cask for nearly 50 years, and it's still so estery and so crazy and so, like, palate saturating. It's just excellent. I will say maybe these rums aren't maybe for everybody. I know that I've done tastings where I've done a lot of, like, a handful of these, and some people didn't like them as much, but it is an example of something I think everyone needs to kind of try if they want to kind of get into rum, just because, I don't know, I think it's a very interesting and unique part of that world. All right, Eli, nose.
Well, you're talking industrial, and I get like that classic, like, nail polishy kind of remover, acetone. That little bit of Parmesan-y kind of note as well. And on the palate, I find this with some Jamaicans as well, especially the higher ester ones, like that menthol-y note really comes forward as well.
Yeah, totally.
Like, I had that high ester Long Pond that when we first opened it was almost undrinkable because it just tasted like menthol rub and it was, like, really uncomfortable. I get a little bit of that on here as well. And then just like pineapple, mango, a little bit of passion fruit on the finish.
Yeah, good call on the passion fruit. Even on the palate, there's nice little, like that nice acidic note of fruit. I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Andrew mentions ester count increases in cask over time. That's something I wasn't aware of. That's cool. It's good to know. I'll have to read up a little bit on that.
I get like Swedish berry candies on the nose as well. Like near the back.
Cool. Swedish berries, like, or maybe even like there's a little bit of that Haribo gummy kind of note too. Yeah, that's good call on the candy.
Yeah, it is. It's very candy behind it all. I find like you blow in the glass just a couple times, it gets rid of some of that chemical note, that nail polish that Eli was mentioning.
Mm.
And the fruits really come out.
I like how dry the rum is too. Like it's quite, I mean, what's the alcohol in it? 53.5. So it's not like too crazy, but it is like, obviously it's a very spirity kind of rum, but it's even if the fruit is juicy, yeah, it's not like sweet fruits. It's just kind of nice and
Yeah,
mellow.
it is. It's really nice. There's a nice cleanness to the finish that you want to keep drinking it.
I mean, I love so I this is almost a little more spirity than what I like to drink them at. Like I've got a couple of Scotch Malt Whiskey Society worthy parks that I'm actually like pretty in love with, and at least one of them is like it's just so my jam. But it's I wonder what it is. I want like maybe there's more wood on here than I want it to be. That might be the case. Yeah. Hmm.
I can say there's quite a bit of wood on the nose. Even like you can smell that in impact, but the palate is just gorgeous.
Mm, mm. Just a little medicinal as well. Oh, it's everything I want in it. Wonderful. I hope that was like kind of like a good enough explanation on donor. There's a it's a huge subject of like esterification and the within the rum, and it might have been disjointed a little bit. I apologize for that, but there's definitely I hope that kind of gives you enough of a not education even, but like just enough things to go on to kind of like you kind of get what's happening with that. It's definitely more like chemical heavy than some people might get into, like knowledge wise. But I mean, I tried to like keep it as as mellow as possible. Okay, I'm going to go on to the last one here. There's another one that so Trinidad Distillers is kind of in the like when I say with I mentioned Guyana, it was like all kind of consolidated into one distillery or one company. The same thing kind of happened in Trinidad, although historically, if there was many more than like the four, like three or four that I know, I'm not that aware of them. Right now, Trinidad Distillers Limited is the producer. Like they, like I mentioned, with the huge Trinidad rum, maybe there's some smaller distilleries that have opened up in the past 10 years. I'm just not aware of them. The main ones that people have maybe heard of would be these guys, Trinidad Distillers. The most famous one of all, Caroni, which was closed in 2002. There was another small scale, like there was another one that was run by the Trinidad government called Ten Cane. And there's one that this rum is kind of an homage to, and it's called Fernandez. Fernandez, it kind of a like I think for the most part it was family owned, but it kind of stopped doing anything rum related in about 1973. 1973, they stopped producing rum, and the company kind of got sold off. Well, yeah, half of the company got sold off. Like the branding and the stills and whatnot and all that stuff got sold specifically to Trinidad Distillers Limited, and then the farm that was on, it's called Flores Park, that was given to the Trinidad government, who in turn was running Caroni at the time too. So it kind of got split up between the two main powerhouses there, Caroni and Trinidad Distillers. It was even rumored that until the Fernandez brand kind of started falling out of favor, a lot of the old Caroni stock was still being put in there. I'm gonna cite the source of like Lance Surujubali, the lone caner, because he's the one who kind of put all this down, and I don't want to snake all of his stuff without giving him a little bit of credit. So if you want to know a little bit more, he's got a really awesome story on if you just go on the lone caner and just search up Fernandez with an S at the end, not a Z. But anyways, the Trinidad Distillers Limited, they have this like massive column still that can produce a lot of different styles of rum. The picture that I mentioned, or that I showed you with the double retort still, that first part is like your typical pot still. A column still is quite a bit different, and it's like just like a big giant column with a lot of metal plates on the inside. Your fermented wash will be injected into the top, and hot steam will be injected into the bottom. And when they meet, it kind of vaporizes and separates out, where you can then the ethanol vapors and everything else is going to come with it will kind of come off, and you can condense that as you will. You can throughout that whole huge column, which is it can go up to a couple stories. I think Loch Lomond has one that's like 3 stories tall. But depending on where you take your spirit out of that column, you'll get like different rums. And so I'm not really sure where this one would have come from, but I mentioned Coroni earlier. They're known for like a heavy rum, and it's because they're taking that spirit from a lower point on that column still. This one's not that heavy. I don't know if it's really going to fall there, but I honestly I don't really know where that mark happens with that. But we don't really get a lot of things that are under the Fernandez mark. In fact, I've only seen 2 in Alberta. One I poured a year and a half ago, I think, at another virtual tasting, coincidentally also from the whiskey agency, which was who bottled our 4th rum there. And then this is the second one. And I was really hoping they'd have a lot of similarities because I absolutely adored that first one. And I'm going to say it kind of does. I don't find it that heavy. I find it like a little on the lighter side. Well, not super light, but definitely like lighter than the Coronis that I've had. But yeah, if you haven't started nosing that, please do. This one's really petrol-y. I think I can kind of tell that the column's still right off the bat. It's so volatile. Like leather polish, lemon zest. Whew. Oh, I should also warn you, this one's 66%, and putting it up to my nose is like, man, this is the rough one, and I kind of forgot for a split second just how high it was.
Just take a sip and you won't forget.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
yeah,
Seriously.
exactly, Harmony.
Mm. You know, it actually does have more weight than I think the other one did. It's got this cool oily mouthfeel that I'm actually like pretty digging. I'm really digging right now. It's really like antiseptic heavy, but there's cool like peach
Yes,
juice
very
notes.
antiseptic heavy.
Yeah. But I'm getting like a ton of burst of fruit on the palate, like peach juice and like tropical nectar.
I get like classic for me for a lot of Trinidad's I get is like passion fruit.
Mhm.
And then I
Very
also
cool.
get like candied guava, which I know probably most people haven't had, but it's very weird little thing that just like connected in my head.
I always get like guava to me is always stinky, and yeah, I've never had candied guava.
Yeah. And then almost like a watermelon-y note.
Cool.
I don't know if that's like
I feel watermelon, but it's more like the whites of the watermelon.
yeah,
It's a bit
like
too
right up
far
to the
in.
rind. Like
Yeah.
you take those last few bites and you're getting a little bit of the rind.
Man, cool note, guys.
Mhm.
Oh, that's wicked.
I think
There's
that's
also
actually
this
my
like
favorite.
heaviness. I've added some water to it just to kind of tone down that alcohol, but there's this nice like weightiness and oiliness that almost kind of hinges on creaminess. It's not, but it's just like this thick, oily layer that
Mm,
Does water
settles in.
help it, Harmony?
It did. For me, it did. Yeah. It didn't
cool.
hurt. I put quite a bit in.
I'm trying to brave it, not because I'm trying to like show any kind of macho-ness, but I think like I don't know why, but I think these high proof, the concentration of the high proof, I really do enjoy. Like I've always enjoyed it, and I just tried tough through it just cause like I mean, yeah, again, nothing to prove. I just want to like I just want to do it.
I'm starting to not be able to feel my tongue, so I had to.
Totally fair. Again, no judgment here, man. No judgment here. Andrew mentions the heavy mark comes off of the first of 4 columns, right? So I guess I didn't mention like I guess you could run a column still a few ways. You can just have one huge column in a tall building, or you can kind of like have it in a series to kind of mimic a tall one. And he said, so first of 4 columns. That makes sense. So that's like almost like a quarter, like a quarter of the way up if it were kind of like stretched out. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, so that's quite heavy. But again, I don't know where on the column this one would be. I don't think it, like I said, I don't think it's as heavy as a Coroni.
I don't know if it's perceived sweetness or not, just based off how much fruit is there, but it's like that with that oiliness, like it just feels like there's some sweetness on there for sure as well. But again, I don't know if that's perceived or not, just based off of how much fruit is on the palate.
Yeah, tough to say. Like you meant, I mean, did you put water in it or?
Brave.
Yeah, I sometimes I feel like that's going to help the sweet, not putting water, but not putting water in because everything's still condensed down. I wonder if maybe that's going to kind of like keep that perception of sweetness a little bit more. Very cool. Yeah. So I guess I didn't really talk about the bottling of this. So the brand that this one comes out after is the Boutique Rum Company, which is kind of the parent is Adam Brands there in the UK, but they also have like the Boutique Whiskey Company. We've done a lot of tastings with them. They kind of do like these kooky kind of jokes of the industry labels, and they to the I'm gonna call it to the detriment of their brand. They do it in 500 ml bottles, which is actually like quite a bit of it's a big contested kind of not contested. It's people gripe about it. They don't like 500 ml bottles, and that you know what, totally fair. I don't mind myself because it allows me to buy more than one, like buy several things or finish it all at once and go over to the next one. But having said that, yeah, their labels are, so their labels kind of take shots at the industry or just they're little just inside cartoony jokes. This one, if I remember correctly, it was one of the boutique guys in their lab, and he opened up a time portal to when I can't remember the guy's name, something Fernandez was buying a bunch of rum casks from the Trinidad government. I don't really get it myself. Some of them are more funny than others. I'll let you guys decide that one, but yeah, but we've been working with Adam Brands for quite a while now. Like I'm gonna say 8 years probably, give or take. We're probably like their biggest partner in Calgary or in Alberta or Canada, really. We literally got a ton of their products. I like their rum stuff, like their whiskey stuff. Like I think they have got excellent stock, and I think their bottlings are great. I love their rum line. Like I think if you were to put a quality per quality, like world whiskey, Scotch whiskey, and rum, the rum, I think it's the best stuff they do, and I think they should focus more on it, and they should release a lot more. We've done Peter Holland is the guy who looks after the rum program, and we did a tasting with him. I'm going to say like 2022, I think, and it was absolutely fantastic. He's a charming guy. He's funny. He's knowledgeable, and yeah, I would actually like to do it again, but because he was just he was excellent. Yeah. Oh, Andrew was there. Great, excellent. I'm glad to hear it. Sorry, Andrew. I guess I never really met you. I'm guessing maybe I don't know if you're in Calgary or not, but if you are, like for sure, come on and introduce yourself to me at some point. But or maybe I do know you and I just don't know your last name. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Here. Oh man, that last one is a monster. I still feel it on the palate.
Cam, I'm really glad you suggested saving some of these whiskeys like we do like in our Scotch tastings, because going back, they've all changed so much, but you still feel their signature within each one. Really interesting, actually, to go back and nose just the glasses, even though some of them are almost empty.
They're all good. They're going to taste like water after that last one, Harmony.
Oh, totally, which is great. I'm going to feel like a real expert.
Man, that Guatemala just became like so halfway through when you went back and revisited it was a lot more cola forward as you were mentioning. Now
It's cake.
it's just like toffee cake, like just like caramel.
To me, it's like the icing sugar on a cake, but you put it on too early and it's kind of melting, like the cake's still warm. It hasn't.
I get like cream cheese icing.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
Cream
it's
cheese
great
icing,
note.
like red velvet almost. Yeah. That's
The
crazy.
second one
That's a
to
good one.
me,
Oh,
it's also like it's licorice, but like very faint, mild licorice. There's a nice menthol in there as well
This
on
is
the JM
this
rum.
is the second one.
Yeah,
yeah. The second one, I actually like that light olivey notes start to come out on this one as it was sitting there too. I'm getting a little bit of those savory notes that I missed when it was freshly poured. That's cool.
hmm
I'm getting all sandalwood, sawdust,
Cool.
Birkenstock.
yeah. Also getting like those like really expensive chocolates with like creamy filling. I never like the taste of them, but I always like the sound of them. They've got like it's just like fancy chocolates to me. That's what that
Like
is.
the acai berry things from Costco. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I like those. No, I mean like the fancy chocolates that you're gifted at Christmas, and they're always
Mm.
like, I don't know, praline cream chocolate, and they're soft inside.
The
Those are
JM is
chocolates.
like getting way more floral. I'm finding
It's neat. I dipped back
perfume.
into that Barbados. It's about the same as it was. You like that nice like that would make such a wicked like rum old fashioned. I think that would be absolutely fantastic.
It's already got like it's got such a whiskey quality to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the reasons Foursquare is so popular is because it has a whiskey quality to it, or at least a lot of the ones I have tried. I've just
Yeah,
been, like
yeah.
similar to a lot of scotches. So
I think you're right. I think for sure. If anyone is like, well, if anyone want, like, I'm just gonna point it out. If anyone wants like an absolute banger of a Foursquare, we have another whiskey sponge one at the shop that it's I think it's about 330 or so, but it's one of their oldest ones from like 2008, I think, or 2000, maybe 2000. Anyway, it's only like 5 years after he first started, and it is so fruity and industrial and like dirty peaches like on the ground. And I poured it at probably one of my first online tastings for rum, and it was such a cracker. And I think it got overshadowed that time, but now it's like, oh my gosh, going back to it, I wish I had one. I really do. I wonder if I can bring it up here while we keep going through this.
Jeff shared it, I think.
we have one open, don't we, at the store?
I've got just a tiny little bit left at the store. There's really not much.
And that's Sean's. So don't come asking for samples. So.
This guy right here. And I gotta say, it is one of the best Foursquares. In fact, that is the best Foursquare I've ever had. It is absolutely unreal. Oh, I want it right now. And I think, unfortunately at 340, like not, it's people have a hard time spending that on rum, and I do get it. We definitely sell a lot more whiskey in that price point than we do rum, but there's definitely a handful of things you just got to keep into account, and that's just like it's harder to age like over long periods of time. Like when you're buying, like as an example, you're buying like the Kappa 23 from Guatemala. There, like when they say 23 years old, they're saying also 23 years old Solera cask, which means that, and like by the nature, you can't really get your age from a Solera because it's mixing with older rums, right? And sometimes minuscule amounts. So when they say 23 years old, it means that's probably like the oldest that Solera is, or possibly an average rum in the Solera system. And then there's other like, well, I don't want to slander anyone, but I mean, there's other distilleries, like for example, like a reasonably well known out of Colombia that has some straight up fabrication on the origins of their rum, and definitely how old it is. So I don't know. I mean, I think seeing 21-year-old rums on the shelf at $100 is a bit of a, I don't know, like I don't take that into account. Yeah. So, anyways. I guess we keep going.
Do you guys have favorites?
Oh, I got a poll we can put out. I got a poll we can put out.
Perfect.
All right. So I have a poll here. So this first place and second place, everybody gets 2 votes. And I'm pretty sure I set this up right. This is my first virtual tasting, like doing everything on my own. Usually Evan sets everything up for me, so I do apologize for some of the screen issues that I had earlier, but Looks like this one is fine. So everyone gets 2 votes there.
Oh, good, Sean.
Yeah.
Your rum selection, I think, has made up for any screen mishaps
Yeah, thanks.
really were
Yeah.
not a big hindrance to the night. I've learned a lot, and I commented and that I'm gonna probably have to rewatch this to try to absorb all the knowledge that you dropped.
Right.
I didn't realize that it was such a complex world. As you said, we've been inundated with such so many rums that are quite the same, just sweet rums, that all just kind of blended together in the world of rums. And only recently have I discovered that there's actually so many different wonderful things.
Totally.
Yeah.
But and also like I mentioned it to you before, but also like the incongruity of rules surrounding rums in different countries. Like, I mean, my favorite example to throw out there is that like in India, there's a sugar spirit that you can buy by the jug that they call whiskey, and it's a sugar spirit. Like, I mean, and that's not a slant on rum necessarily, but I mean, agricole is going to follow certain rules. Like we talked, I mentioned a little bit with Guyana doing certain rules, or not Guyana, sorry, Guatemala doing certain rules. Like everyone's going to do things slightly differently, and there's not a lot of congruities country to country. I mean, there's definitely some, but I mean, like, the age statements, the Solera, the things like that. Like, I mean, it's not without its challenges. In fact, we don't even really talk about or I try not to talk about like dark rum, amber rum, things like that. Like those words don't really mean anything anymore. Like I think it's more important to focus on where it's from. In some cases, maybe like who colonized that place a long time ago and what kind of descent and what kind of heritage that the rum traditions in that country might have and the like. So it's a hard world to get into, and like even I'm finding it challenging to remember everything that I get out of each thing. Yeah. All right, how many people do we got here? 10 out of 11. One more person. That's all right. But what do we got?
I don't think I'm able to vote.
Yeah, none of
I,
us.
yeah.
None of us
So the co-hosts can't vote, but we can go through it. So let's see, Eli, what you tell me first. What's your first place and second place?
The boutique, and then the diamond.
Diamond, cool. Yeah, that's very nice. Harmony.
Oh man, first place is tough because there's like a few that I mean, I think I'm torn between like 3, the Valentine Mallet, the NAS 15, and the Dramore for me. Like
Cool.
those all were standouts.
And understandably so. Yeah. I mean, they're
And
all
I mean,
quite
I
good.
love the Black Tot, but I've had it before, so I knew I was gonna love it. So like
Totally.
Yeah.
Cam.
The diamond for me is number 1.
Cool.
And
Nice.
and I like the black tot. I'm gonna
Yeah,
say
yeah.
black tot's number 2.
Fun. That's excellent. Yeah, excellent choices for sure. That Black Tusk, it's hard not to be a winner. Like it's just so good.
I mean, I think all of it was really very very good.
Yeah.
I agree with Eli. The Barbados was kind of boring, very typical.
That's fair.
And
Yeah.
the JM was just a little too odd for me.
I like
Right.
JM, and I would actually like to own a bottle, but it definitely would be something I would gravitate to all the time. But it would definitely, I could see myself wanting to drink this again.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep an eye on the
in
store
general,
bottle, Shane.
in general,
Uh,
Sean, great tasting.
Yeah, no, thanks. Okay, so for mine, my favorite, just so because I get to vote as well, my favorite is the Trinidad for sure. I think that I don't know if it's like the textural component, the weight, the fruitiness, it really hits all the bases for me. And then second place is the St. Catherine because I love Worthy Park. I love high proof Worthy Park. I love it with a bit of age on it, and that one's definitely taking it for me. I will give an honorable mention to the JM though because I personally really enjoyed that one, and it's a little different for some of the agricoles that we've been pouring, but I'm not gonna hold that against it at all.
Yeah.
So what came in first? Okay, so first place was the Diamond. Very cool. Love that. So you guys can race to that. Like we'll like I said, there's only a couple left. I think I can get more if anybody wants it though. So don't worry too much. And then the black
No, what
tot
you
came in.
mean is we can get more by 2.
Yeah, totally right. Yeah. And the Black Top Master Blenders Reserve came in second place, which honestly I can see. I absolutely. I think so I guess I swam against the river. That's fine. I don't mind. I don't mind being different. Because no one picked the Fernandez at first. St. Catherine a little bit. Yeah, cool.
No,
All right.
nobody liked the NAS, hey? Not for
I guess
everyone.
not, eh? Well, no bourbon
Alright.
lovers here, I guess. Yeah.
More for me.
Mm-hmm.
The Fernandez
Cool.
was good, but man, that 66% is high.
It's
I
high,
did-
man.
I
Yeah.
did feel that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess it makes up for that 500 ml bottle. You can really stretch it out.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Kevin. I was asking the Trinidad. Sorry, I didn't see that. That was the Fernandez. Sorry, Trinidad Distillers, the boutique, the last one.
Awesome tasting, Sean. This was
Thanks.
a lot of fun. Very
Thanks. Sorry, I was just reading the chat there again. Igor says it's the closest tastings ever. Oh, like for like the score wise? Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, anyways, yeah. So that's about all I have for you here. Guys, thanks so much for coming by. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much, Andrew, for helping me out with a few of those facts that I wasn't aware of, or maybe correcting me on a couple of things I was getting wrong, because yeah, I'm only human. I'm glad to see so many familiar faces here. Cam, I'm really glad this is the first tasting with me that you got to sit in on, which is pretty sweet. And I think I'm going to see you tomorrow night too. And yeah, that's it. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean. That was great.
Take care.